right, so welcome to the Rob Burgess Show, me. This is the first time I've ever flown solo on the Rob Burgess Show. Normally I would have a guest. Normally I'd have a set of questions. I don't really have that, but I feel like we can make this work. When I was a little kid, I used to sit in my room, and I used to have a picnic table in my room, and I would sit on either side of the picnic table when I was supposed to be taking a nap, and I would interview myself, but I wouldn't be interviewing myself like I was talking to myself. I was pretending to be both sides of the conversation. So I would be the both interviewer, and then I would go to the other side of the picnic table, and I would sit at that side and answer the question that me on the other side had just asked. So I wasn't trying to be both people, but I kind of had to be, because in that situation, I was the only person there. So hopefully it won't be like that exactly. But anyway, welcome to the solo episode of the Rob Burgess Show. I figured as long as I ask people, and this will be the 41st episode of the Rob Burgess Show, I've asked a lot of people to expose a lot of themselves, willingly. I never recorded anybody without their knowledge. But people that I've interviewed have shown a lot of themselves in many different ways, and I converse with them, and I reveal parts of myself as they tell their own stories, but I've never sat down and talked about myself in a long way, like an episode length way. So I thought this would be a good time to just tell you a little bit about myself, only because I try to stay out of the way as much as possible when I do these interviews. I really don't like to, and it's annoying to me when I hear other people interviewed that the interviewer won't get out of the way of the answers, that they don't want to actually hear the answers, they just want to hear themselves talk. For all the great things about Howard Stern, for example, he's a great talker, he gets a lot out of people, but he so dominates the conversation that it's just not what, and it's great in its own way, but it's not what I'm going for. I never want, this podcast to be about me necessarily. It's usually hopefully it's always just about the people that I'm interviewing, and getting them to express themselves as fully as possible without me stepping on them. So anyway, I don't like to. I talk about myself, and I tell people, things about my life. When they reveal things about their life, I try to reciprocate in kind with things that, we have common ground with, that you have something in your life, I have something in my life. But that's as far as I try to take it. It doesn't always work that way. But so as I've definitely talked about all the time, I am a journalist. I am the fourth generation I'm the fourth generation in my family on my mom's side to be a journalist. I grew up in newsrooms, mainly one newsroom, but the Times-Mail in Bedford, Indiana. My mom was a columnist and lifestyle editor. So I spent a lot of late nights in newsrooms waiting for my mom to finish the paper. So I wrote for the Times-Mail. I wrote for my high school newspaper, The Orbit. Wrote for that for 4 years, the newspaper at Mitchell High School in Mitchell, Indiana. Became the editor-in-chief my final year, senior year. I also simultaneously to that intermittently wrote for the Times-Mail where my mom had worked at the time. And then I went to Indiana University But I took a left turn in some ways, you could say, into education. And it wasn't really that much of a left turn. It was, I had been a student teacher of sorts for one period a day during my senior year of high school with my 5th grade teacher, Mr. Watterson, who I liked very much. It wasn't totally out of the realm of possibility for me to be a teacher. But I realized maybe too late that I did not want to actually have majored in elementary education, which I ended up doing. That my interests lie, back with, what I was doing with, the newspaper, various newspaper journalism, being a reporter, being somebody that writes for a living. So I knew that was where my ultimate passions lay. And I always wrote for myself. I have some embarrassing diaries. I called them journals because that's more manly. Diaries, journals, what have you, somewhere that will never see the light of day if I can ever find them. So, I write for myself. I would always write for myself whether or not anything became of it. It meant something. I felt it was very important to document what was going on with me. But it is embarrassing to read back with that stuff. It really is. Which is mainly one of the main reasons why I don't keep a diary or a journal or whatever you want to call it anymore. Only because I know there is no time in the future which I will enjoy having read. I may want certain details that I've written, I guess, but to wade through that with all the who is this person? Anyway, I don't do that anymore. But the point is that I would write for myself, and I would always write just how I was feeling, what was going on. So I had that in me, and I knew I did. But I also, when I was in college, got involved in an overseas teaching program. So I was kind of trapped in certain ways because I didn't want to lose this opportunity to go overseas and teach kids. And if I didn't get that, then I felt like I would never get to do that. So, junior year, I was kind of like, I kind of knew that I shouldn't be doing this. But I really had it was really a matter of weeks at that point, because the first part of the last semester of my senior year, which I graduated in 4 years, this is in 2005. As I graduated high school in 2001, and then I graduated IU Bloomington in 2005. So the first part of 2005, I spent student teaching here in Indiana. So then in about March, I went over to England, and I student taught at a elementary school. It was St. Nicholas Primary School in Cranley in Surrey, United Kingdom. And I did that. I was there for 3 months. It was great. It was a wonderful experience in every way. It was so much fun. And I got to see, Europe. I took a 2-week trip through the continent. On a EU rail pass. Saw France, saw Germany, saw Netherlands, Spain. So just great, awesome experience. But I came back and had this degree in something that I knew that I didn't necessarily want to do for the rest of my life. I eventually became a teacher's assistant at Eastern Green Elementary School. I lived in Bloomington, and I lived with Jonathan, who you've heard a number of times on the podcast, and Ash, and another person named Mike, but we won't go there. And Ash, who I had known because she was first friends with Jonathan and then with me, I came back and we lived together. And, we were roommates first, and then we were more than roommates. And the rest is history. So while I was living in Bloomington, teaching at Eastern Green Elementary, in Greene County. I also began to do news stories for WFHB in Bloomington for their daily local news program. I had been and also was at the time a DJ, both before and after I went to England. I had a late night radio show called Mind Bullets, which Jonathan was on several times along with other people. And I was from 1 to 3 in the morning, or if the person after me didn't show up, 3, or I could go 3 to 6 as well, but I didn't have to. All I had to do was just, lock the studio up at night and then leave. So Friday, 1 to 3 a.m., that was my time on the radio, but I also did, daily local news stories. So I did a number of stories for WFHB, and at the same time, I also had applied for education reporter position at the Martinsville Reporter-Times. But I didn't really have any clips to show them the first time this job came open. So they suggested that I come back with some clips, and I don't know how it happened who I got in contact with or who talked to who, but I did start doing freelance work for the Times Mail again, for their lifestyle section. So I did that simultaneous to me working as the correspondent for the Daily Local News at WFHB, so that when the job came open again later at the Reporter-Times, I had something to show them, and I'd been taking basically all the available freelance work that I could there. So then I became a reporter at the Martinsville paper, and I started doing my column, House of Burgess. That was the first place that was published. During that time, this was 2007 by now, so I graduated IU in 2005. In 2007, I got the job at the Reporter-Times. So I only worked at the Reporter-Times for a couple of months, because while I was working there, I had been sending my resume out to pretty much every newspaper in Northern California. And I had wanted to move to California since I can remember knowing what California was. I mean, my cousins and my aunt and uncle lived in San Diego, so we went there sometimes, and it was just, I was just like, yep, yes, I would like to live here someday. So I just, I sent my my information to every, newspaper in Northern California, and just so happened that without me knowing it, the Ukiah Daily Journal in Ukiah, California, in Mendocino County, 2 hours north of San Francisco, was hiring. So I interviewed over the phone. Ash and I flew out. We, at that time, were living together by ourselves. Yeah, so I worked at the Ukiah Daily Journal for 2 years, from 2007 to 2009. In 2009, I stopped working as a reporter for the Ukiah Daily Journal, and I became the producer of the Ukiah Valley Television weekly news show. And I did that for a year. That pretty much ended, and the whole thing pretty much ended soon after that. So that is no more. The domain name doesn't even work anymore for that business. So I moved back from California with Ash, which we had gotten married just months before we moved back in Indiana. Moved back, and I was working 3 jobs. De-icing airplanes at the Indianapolis International Airport. I worked at a call center, and I was freelance writing for NUVO Newsweekly soon after I got back. So I was doing all those things simultaneously, working. I think the longest stretch I ever worked with no break was 21 days. So I was just working my tail off, because it was 6 months in between when the Ukiah Valley TV thing ended, pretty much totally ended. The business went under soon after I was laid off, because it was really just one guy, and it just, yeah. Anyway, so 6 months in between then, when on July of 2009 until I moved back to Indiana with Ash. Oh, that was a crazy, crazy trip. Just no sleep. I drove all the way back from California to U-Haul. It was just mayhem. Just mayhem. I've never been that tired, even with a newborn, I don't think. It was dangerous. In July 2010 is when I was laid off from Ukiah Valley TV. It went under soon after that. November of 2010 when we moved back to Indiana. So that's when we moved to Noblesville, Indiana. So anyway, that was when I was working the 3 jobs at the call center, the de-icing airplanes, and NUVO Newsweekly. This was during the winter of 2010. Yes, okay, into 2011. 2011 to 2012, I was pretty much just working at the call center. And that was the worst job I ever had. That was terrible for many reasons. I'm part of a class action lawsuit against that employer, if that tells you anything. The wages that they paid people were not fair. I'll put it that way. At all. In March of 2012, I had applied to and got the job I currently have at the Kokomo Tribune. So that was, March 31st of 2012 was my first day at the Kokomo Tribune. Oh, talking for this long is exhausting. Voice gets all rattly. I just usually go, yep. You don't say. So, talking nonstop. So anyway, I'm now an award-winning journalist. I've won 5 awards. I've been part of other awards that for general staff, just for general excellence and greatness. You can go to my website, thisburgess.com, read all about it if you want to. But, I've been at the Kokomo Tribune now for coming up on, it'll be 5 years in 3 months. That's pretty much my work life story, career life story. As far as podcasts go, the first podcast I ever heard was the Ricky Gervais Show with Stephen Merchant and Carl Pilkington. That was when I was living in California, so that had to have been between 2007 and 2010, probably closer to 2008, whenever that happened. Somewhere around then was when I heard my first podcast. I started my first podcast, which was Robcast. There was only, I believe, 16 episodes of that. It was pieces of short writing each week by me or people that you would know from this podcast, like Ash. I did that I think I pretty much did that until I worked at the Ukiah Valley television job. So I did that. That must have been 2009. So because then when I got the Ukiah Valley television job, I stopped doing that podcast. It was just a lot of work to write something or have someone else write something, have it be good. And I don't know. I just didn't stick with it. I think because I made the concept a little too hard. It wasn't natural. It was a good experiment. I'm very proud of that podcast, but I don't think I was meant to do that for a long time. It wasn't fitting for what I was trying to do ultimately, I don't think. And then when I started this podcast, it was March of this year. But I've been thinking about doing a podcast for much longer than that. I've been writing about podcasts on my website for a long time. I listen to podcasts constantly. I think they're one of the most exciting mediums to happen in a long time. It really is just a great format for my sensibility. So I was going to go through, I have the episode list pulled up for the Rob Burgess Show, the illustrious podcast you're listening to right now. Episode 1, we had Sean Spicer. He's been on again. I hope we can have another one, Sean, if you're listening. after the new year. Jonathan was episode 2, Jonathan Fowler. He's been on 10 times now. Zach Samsel was episode 3. We talked about Kanye West for nearly 3 hours. Yeah, we probably have more to discuss on that, Zach. We should probably talk again. Michael A. Wood Jr. was episode 4. The first person that I interviewed who wasn't somebody that was always already friends with. But Michael A. Wood Jr. has been on again later on in the podcast, and hopefully again soon. Episode 5 was Matt Alano Martin of the Limestone Comedy Fest, which I have been to since its beginning, except for last year, but I will go again. Episode 6 was the Kingdom of Sweden. So we had almost 3 hours of this phone number that Sweden, I think it was the tourism board, if I remember right. You could call a random Swede, and they would sign up for this and get to talk to them. And that was a lot of fun, actually. That was a good episode. Mallory Willits was episode 7. She is going to be on again soon. We just talked recently, and she's got some pretty exciting stuff coming up. That's all I'll say for now. Episode 8, Melanie Simay, who I saw today got retweeted by Chuck Palahniuk. Shout out. So she, that was a great episode. We need to do that again soon. Episode 9 is Benjamin Fowler. That's Jonathan's brother, of course. Just a lot of good talk about music that episode. Jonathan was on again, episode 10. Monica Stark, worked together at the Ukiah Daily Journal. So we definitely should talk again. Episode 12 was Kristin Clifford. Kristin has since she was just about to move to LA, and she did since then, so she's out there. So episode 13 was Martin Shkreli. He posted his phone number again on Twitter, and I had half a mind to call him, but I didn't bring my recording equipment to where I was at when I saw that. So maybe next time. Episode 14 was Brandon Chapman and Josh Sigler of the Sounding Off podcast. We should do one again. Episode 15 was Rick Friday, cartoonist who has since got his job back at the Farm News, where his cartoon was canceled unceremoniously after offending a local seed dealer. So due to public pressure, he's gotten that back, and he's got a lot more opportunities too. So good for him, and we should talk to him again soon. Ash's first episode was on episode 16. We have the Kingdom of Sweden again in episode 17, but that's where I figured out that the phone number to call Sweden had been closed. So I talked to somebody from the tourism board. Hope they do it again. That was a good idea. More countries should do it. Michael A. Wood Jr. was back episode 18 for a second appearance. Bryn Greenwood, episode 19. Great episode. I just started reading the book that she was talking about on that episode, All the Ugly and Wonderful Things. She has been, I believe, on the Amazon bestsellers list recently. I saw her tweet. So good for her, and we'll have her back soon, I hope. Jonathan Fowler, episode 20, third appearance. Fourth appearance, episode 21. Jeff Smith, that was a really good episode. Talked about his book, Mr. Smith Goes to Prison. Sean Spicer came back for episode 23. The Sean Spicer episode 23 episode was interesting because when I posted that to YouTube, so with the number of copyright infringement violation notices, eventually just had to end up reposting that episode on YouTube without the music that Sean had mixed and that was talking about in the episode. So you want to hear the full version of that, go to SoundCloud, because YouTube is the edited version, and they think he's on the wrong side of the internet law. Episode 24, Kim Sohee, that was a good episode as well, and she should come back on soon. She had some unique perspectives from Korea. Episode 25 was Mark Levin. That was another great episode. Talked about his documentary, Crack in the System, Freeway Crack in the System. Emmy nominated. Episode 26, Ash came back. Episode 27, Ash came back again. Episode 28, John Seabrook. John Seabrook was another great guest. Talked about his book, The Song Machine. Definitely read that. Jonathan Fowler came back for episode 29, 5th appearance. Episode 30, Jonathan Fowler again for the 6th appearance. 7th appearance, Jonathan Fowler. 8th appearance, episode 32, 33. Oh, sorry, 32. Yeah, 32 was the 8th appearance. So we did all the presidential debates. That's why there's so many. But those hold up very well. I like those episodes. Nathan Rabin was episode 33. Hope we can have him back soon. That was a great episode. Jonathan Fowler, again, Big Daddy Cha-Cha, episode 34, 9th appearance, 10th appearance, episode 35. Heidi Byrick of the Southern Poverty Law Center, another great interview. Ashley Jennifer Parker, veteran stand for Standing Rock. We'll hopefully talk to Michael A. Wood Jr. again soon. Robert Cohen. We have Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, photojournalist. That was a great episode. Ash came back for a 4th appearance on episode 39. And this last week, Freeway Rick Ross. Another great interview. Also the star of the Freeway Crack in the System movie, as mentioned before. So just, I'm very proud of all the episodes that I've done. And I'm really happy that these conversations can exist in perpetuity. Because there are people I know that I really enjoy just listening to them talk. And obviously you can tell from who I've had on here who I think is an interesting person to talk. Because pretty much that's the binding thread of this podcast. If I had to pick something, it would be that it's just that I think these people are interesting. And I think they have something to say. And I don't believe in, if you want to go back to talking over people, I also don't believe in the sound bite. I don't believe in taking things out of context, and I don't believe in mischaracterizing people willfully. And that's the part of the reason I don't, just to bring it to a different place, but that's part of the reason I don't take much heed of people that leave comments on things. And I try to catch myself when I leave comments on things. It's like, is this necessary? There are people out there that are looking to mischaracterize you. And they're willing to take you out of context. And they're really just waiting for you to say something where they can just clip that out of a larger context and hang you with it. But because they don't like you. Not because you're actually wrong or that they could disprove you. It's just that they don't like what you have to say, and they want to find a reason. I think that everyone has something to say if you just give them the chance to say it. So that's really the unifying feature of this podcast. So I always, when I interview people, the final question, and I really ask this more if during the course of the rest of our conversation we didn't talk about this, but I always ask people what music they've been listening to lately. I try not to ask people what, and I don't think I ever have asked this, but I don't ask people what kind of music they like. It's less about, because if you actually like music, you'll just like it if it's good, and it won't really matter what genre it is. It's only people that are trying to be down with a certain affiliation are going to say, I identify with this most strongly, because you're signaling more than just expressing an opinion about music. But I ask people what they've been listening to lately, because I think it's interesting, and I like music. So anyway, I ask people that all the time, but I don't ever talk about, I don't offer anything first. I just kind of go with whatever people say. So here's the music these are the stations on my Pandora app. And keep in mind, I made some of these stations quite a while ago. And this isn't even all of them, because I brush up against the limit of having 100 stations all the time. And I have to go back and delete Pandora stations just to create new ones. I can't even have all the ones I want to have on here. Starting in the A section, AC/DC, one of my favorite bands. Bon Scott, one of the greatest lead singer ever. Astrid Gilberto. I think I made that station for my father-in-law, Richard Cartwright. I think we were gonna have dinner one time, and he suggested it as dinner music. So it's good. It's very mellow. The Beatles, of course. I've had a complicated relationship with the Beatles, but I eventually got to see that, and I also talk about this in the episode with Melanie Samay. She asked me Beatles or Stones, which is a good question. But Beatles, everybody likes the Beatles. It's a very popular thing to like, but things are popular because they're good. The Black Keys, I think they're very good, although I think Jack White doesn't like them. Bob Marley, of course. Brothers Johnson, just great band. Cake, maybe my favorite band. Sally Cell. Of course, I love, I told you I lived in Northern California, so Bay Area hip-hop is very big in my catalog. The Champs, I also love surf rock. There's a Christmas station, of course, because it's a couple days after Christmas. The Click, so E40 and The Click. Coffee Brothers. The Coup, some more Bay Area hip-hop. Oh, Courtney Barnett, Australian singer-songwriter, very good. Culture, really great reggae band. Currency, Cypress Hill. Ooh, Danny and the Juniors, doo-wop group from the 50s. Dead Kennedys, love Dead Kennedys. Devin the Dude, of course. Diggable Planets. There's a disco station. I've been getting really into disco lately. There's this one DJ called Disco Perfection, and I can only find him on YouTube. I can't find him anywhere else. All the links are dead. I'll never figure this out. There's nobody behind this. There's somebody behind it, because they make great extended disco remixes. Disco Perfection. There's a whole playlist on YouTube of them. Dropkick Murphys, E40, Easy Star All Stars Radio. I think that they do covers of popular songs, I think, in reggae style. Eka Mouse, another reggae artist. Okay, so this is an interesting thing about Pandora, is Pandora, I found that if you want to squeeze more songs out of Pandora, do something slightly to the left of what you want to hear, or do something where it combines the name of the artist you want to hear in a different name-wise than normal. So I wanted more than one Run the Jewels station, so I made an LP and Killer Mike station, which I believe is their tag for the first Run the Jewels album. Frank Sinatra, entering the Fs, now then the Gs. George Thorogood. I really wish George Thorogood would not have so much saxophone. But other than that, I think he's great. Ghetto Boys. Gogol Bordello. Gorillaz. Another one of my favorite bands. Grammatic. I haven't listened to Grammatic in a while. I should listen to Grammatic again. Hank Williams, Sr. Should specify. I think I also had a Hank the Third station at one point. Never Junior. Hill Stomp. It's a good two-man blues band from Portland. Hound Dog Taylor. Ooh, I should listen to Hound Dog Taylor again. This is the Hutsut song radio station, which the Hutsut song is the song that plays in A Christmas Story. It is when Ralphie, it was when, the first scenes where Ralphie is at the dinner table talking about the Red Ryder, BB gun, and on the radio it comes on. It's like, So songs like that in that 1930s style. Annie Kamosi, well, I probably created that to listen to Here Come the Hot Stepper. James Brown, the John Lurie National Orchestra. John Lurie, just straight up, so there's another example of squeezing more out of Pandora. John Prine, excellent. Johnny Cash, of course. Juicy J. Kanye West. Kanye. Killer Mike, again, another repeat. Cool Keith. Lori Berkner, I must have created that for my son, my 2-year-old son. Le Tigre. Les Claypool. Link Ray. Little Richard. Mac Dre. Mark Morrison. Mary Jane Girls. Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, which on the way back from California, we listened to that pretty much nonstop during the time I was driving back. Montel Jordan, Morris Day, Motorhead, Oasis, Odd Squad, Peter Tosh, Pokey Lafarge, and the South City 3, Pokey Lafarge, just look solo. The Presidents of the United States of America, Primus, Project Pat, Purple Ribbon All-Stars, so more Killer Mike. Queens of the Stone Age, R. Crumb and his cheap suit. What's the name of that band? R.L. Burnside, reggae, just genre station. Reverend Horton Heat, Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band, Rick James, Robert Palmer, Roger. That would be Roger from Zap. I think I have a Zap station later. Rolling Stones, Run the Jewels, Sister Nancy, The Specials, Steve Earle, Tenor Saw, 3-6 Mafia, The Time, Tribe Called Quest, Van Halen, Winston Riley, Wu-Tang Clan, Zapp and Roger, and that's it. So yeah, hopefully that shows the breadth of my interests musically. I have a lot of them, and they go in every direction. For all years and all genres, except for modern country. And I say modern, I'm talking your Toby Keiths, your Garth Brookses, although they have some catchy songs, I suppose. It's just not something I need to seek out, because it is everywhere. Pretty much everywhere I've lived, Northern California included, and Indiana. Not England so much, but a little bit. There's a little country contingent over there. My goodness, this is exhausting. Is this exhausting for my guests as this is for me? I just don't even want to listen to myself talk anymore. I hope all my recording equipment has been working properly. I would hate to think that this is like sometimes when I record the intro to this show, I'll forget to turn the mic on, and it's like, oh, just a minute and 30 seconds I wasted, BFD. But I've been talking for a long time. It feels like a long time. There's been much longer episodes than this. Maybe if I wasn't holding up both ends of the conversation, it would be easier. I mean, there's a give and take when conversations happen, but it's really just giving or taking. I don't know. Maybe it's all one or the other. Who knows? I don't know how people do this. Just talk to themselves. It's crazy. But some people do whole podcasts like this. That was the other thing about Robcast. It was all just me and one person. I couldn't even... Those were like... I don't think any of those episodes were longer than 10 minutes. So I'm excited for 2017. I hope that it was better than 2016. It won't take much to make that happen. It wasn't all bad. It wasn't all bad year. It's just a lot of crushing things happened. Just emotionally devastating things happened. But some good things happened too. So I'm looking forward to becoming a father again. I'm looking forward to this podcast exceeding everyone's wildest expectations. I feel good about this podcast. I'm very proud of it. I put a lot of work into it. I hope that shows. I care about it very much. I love the conversations. Like I said, I'm so glad that there's a recording of all these people that I've talked to. I appreciate everyone who's been on. I hope you guys keep listening, man. Yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for reading anything I wrote or listening to anything I had to say this year. just thankful to get to do this, you know. I feel like in some ways it's harder to be a journalist than ever, but I feel like it's more important than ever too. And it's an honor, you know, like I said, to bring it back all the way back to the beginning here. You know, I'm the fourth generation of person in my family to do this. You know, this isn't a passing thing for me. It's an honor to be able to serve a higher calling during a time of need. And I think anyone who's a real journalist looks at it that way in certain respects. Because even though it's hard, that's part of why it's important. Closing out 2016, I'd say 2016. I won't miss you. You're good riddance to all that. Ready out with the old, in with the new. Let's see what 2017 looks like. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.